story I'd like to share is that one day I was lucky enough to be sitting on a stage, and alongside me were Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett and Ben Burt and a few other people from the Empire and from Jedi. Somebody asked a question about what made the movie so special, and I sort of interrupted the rest of them to say the thing that made these movies so special was being able to work with guys like this.
But nothing changes the fact that this place filled me with pride every day, that I could get up and go to work and know that I was working in the best place in the world for visual effects.
There was a refrigerator that we used to keep our lunches and cold drinks cold in the facility. And that refrigerator, with age, eventually succumbed and ceased to work. I chose to dispatch the refrigerator in a relatively extreme way. So I took the forklift and penetrated the refrigerator, took the refrigerator on the tines of the forklift outside where a rope was tied to it. We lifted it high in the air, and then we pulled the refrigerator, or began to pull the refrigerator off the tines of the forklift. And again, as timing would have it, this was exactly when the executives showed up to see how work was going at the facility. We all felt as though we were in it together, and some of that stuff was part of doing that.
My favorite / most hated memory is John Dykstra was nominated for Academy Award for Visual Effects on Star Wars. His girlfriend, Cass McCune, broke up with him about a week before, so he asked me to attend the Academy Awards. It was my birthday. It was my 25th birthday. I'm at the hairdresser, getting beautiful. I'd bought a gown, I was having my makeup and hair done, and I get a call from Cass McCune saying, "We made up. I'm going to the Academy Awards." I went anyway, fully dressed up, full makeup, full hair, and I was in the crowd outside, and as they arrived on the red carpet, I screamed, "John Dykstra, you son of a bitch!" And the security comes and grabs my arms and walks me off. I talked him out of arresting me because it was my birthday. So that's my little piece, my little secret memory that nobody knows.
We had a meeting and hit it off pretty well. And I got hired after 20 minutes. The pay was going to be $600 a week. And I was making, at the time, I was making $350 at Abel's. But I gave Abel a couple of months' notice, and by the time I left, I was making $750. So Abel kept giving me these massive raises trying to buy me. But the idea of, doing a feature and doing visual effects for a feature was attractive to me, and I was worried about Star Wars because trust in the Force, Luke, was a who's going to make that line play? Brando? I mean, it needed somebody with gravitas to make that play, and I didn't know that kind of a budget was available for Star Wars because it seemed kind of like a teenage movie at that moment. I was at a few months later, I guess it was a couple months later, when we were already into it, and I was at the coffee machine and I heard Jim Nelson announce over the PA that Alec Guinness had been cast for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And at that moment, I knew Jaws was in trouble. The shark was in trouble because Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness transcended the demographic that I was thinking that the movie was going to be playing to. And at that moment, I felt that it was going to be a blockbuster, and I had complete faith that it was going to be, and it was.
And we were hungry, and we'd finished our day, and we wanted to get something to eat. So we decided we would go to the Hamburger Hamlet on Hollywood Boulevard because they had made great burgers, and we were leaving the next day to go on vacation. We didn't love to be around during the press junkets. Anyway, long story short, we were sitting in Hamburger Hamlet having our burgers, and across the street was Grauman's Chinese Theater, and in Grauman's Chinese Theater, all these limos were lining up. Well, what's going on over there? And we didn't know. George didn't know, I didn't know, nobody knew, that Star Wars was opening at Grauman's Chinese, and we said, but it's Star Wars.
I can remember on putting potatoes in the asteroid field during Empire Strikes Back. I've got tennis shoe flying around and some gum used as spaceships in Jedi. And I think this all comes about just talking about things I was playing around with just to keep me awake during the night crew. And we would put things in the slates is it Empire? Isn't it awful I can't remember some of this stuff, but Empire has the giant worm thing that comes out of the asteroid and grabs the Millennium Falcon. Well, I was shooting the surface detail of that and flying over the top of it. And at the end of the take, I spent a lot of useless time building this hand puppet of a worm that was all ridiculous, screwy cartoon eyes, and had it come up through the crater instead of what it should have come out of the crater. And it was good for dailies. It kind of, I think it epitomizes what the feeling was here and the attitude, which was very loose, yet everyone working very hard, having the freedom to do a lot of different things, experiment, and also just to horse around too. No one was saying, stop that, you're wasting time, or, it's not professional. Thank God none of us were professional at the time.
I was one of the three of us that went to Guatemala. I'm in the person in the scene, as the Millennium Falcon takes off and like Yavin and, I'm doing this kind of stuff.
It just blew my mind. Working with all these people, amazing talent. And that's what stuck on my mind. The joy that I had every morning. I just couldn't wait to get up to go to work.
Kirk got himself, drank whiskey every night and stayed up really late and got himself really sick.
Soaked in urethane.
So his dad had to come up and
revive me
and do a tour of the studio. And he was went in the mold room and went I understand that this urethane foam that you use off-gases cyanide. Isn't that what they use to execute prisoners?
I fell asleep once in the Starfield, which was a gigantic, this chamber thing where you had lights in it, and it had, you poked holes in the paint. I fell asleep in there, taking a nap in the middle of the day, and then somebody, probably Richard Edlund, came on and turned on the Starfield, and it suddenly became, 200 degrees inside that thing. And it was like being inside a toaster oven. I woke up, of course, and screamed.
It wasn't titled Episode 4, and at that point, nobody had any idea what the film would be, that it would be such an incredible impact on not only the film business, but the world.
And I worked with, initially with Bill George. He and I were painting the skin on the Death Star model. And I thought I would put a little bit of graffiti on the Death Star. So through one of the little slats, I put "Hi Mom" and a couple other words. And George came in one afternoon to review the model, because it's a big part of the movie, right? It gets blown up. George kind of looks at it, talks to George, Bill George and myself, and he goes, and by the way, Frank, take out the "Hi Mom" and the other things. I was amazed, because the words were so small, it was inconceivable that he could have spotted it, but he did.
It was a private screening up at George's house. The only people that attended were the editing crew and me. There were probably 8 people in the room. And the film had been put together, just enough of it so that we could see almost the whole story. There were no special effects in it. There were title cards or slugs where there was supposed to be an effect shot, or there was a scene cut in from an old airplane aviation war movie, dogfights or something. A little afraid, what are we going to see? Because no one person had seen the whole film yet together. Editors, there were 3 editors plus George cutting, working separately, and separate reels. And so here they were, attached together for the first time. And I sat in the back row watching it. And as it went along, I realized this is really something special.